Hi, everybody. Will here with this week's interview chair. Today in the chair, we have my lifelong friend, Mr. Carl Liepman. Sit back and enjoy Carl for an hour. Today on the interview chair, we have my dear friend, Carl Liepman. How are you, Carl?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. What have you been doing?
Well,
You've been judging a lot and all that.
So. Well, judging a lot, but I just got back from Montana. Every year I go out to Montana hunting with my partner, and we have gone for 46 out of the last 48 years together.
Wow.
And this year we decided not to go hunting simply because of the drought and all the problems they've had out there. So we just flew out for 3 days and visited with our friends and came back on Monday.
Oh, and I'm sure that was fun, catching up and just hanging out. So you ready to start?
I am.
All right. Tell me how old you were, Carl, and how you got involved in the sport of dogs.
Well, when I was 14 years old in 1953, my mother told me about the dog show at the Genesee County Kennel Club down at the old IMA Sports Arena. And I said I would like to go down and see the show. And she said, well, if you go down, look up some people by the name of Putnam, and they will be able to tell you what the show's all about. And it was a bench show at that time. So I did. And Mr. and Mrs. Putnam took me under their wing and showed me their dogs. They had bloodhounds and rough collies. And in the conversation, they asked me if I'd like to show one of them. And I said, well, if you show me what to do, I'd be thrilled to. So I showed one of the bloodhounds. They showed the other bloodhound. There were only two in the show. And I won with the dog I was showing. And they said, I did such a good job. Why don't I show one of the three rough collies? And I did, and I won, and I was hooked. That was 1953, and I still have that catalog.
Wow.
So amazing. This catalog is 68 years old.
How many dogs were in the show?
Oh, my gosh, I can't tell you, but I don't even know if it's in the front of the book, but it was more than likely less because they didn't get great entries in those days.
Yeah.
But let's see. It
looks similar to one of our old catalogs. So.
Yeah, it's not much different than the catalogs we even get today, but it does not give a total.
No.
At the beginning. So I'm guessing around 350 or 400.
Yeah, that sounds like what we would have gotten back then as well. So
anyway, obviously I was 14 years old, so I wasn't, and my parents, my mother and my stepfather were not interested in even having a dog. So I didn't stay involved until I got out of the service. After I got out of the service, I got my own dog. And surprisingly enough, it was a white German Shepherd.
Oh, wow, really?
And I had no idea that white German Shepherds couldn't be shown in the States. They could in Canada at the time, but not in the States. But that's a whole nother story. So
how old were you then when you got to the service, Carl?
I went in when I was 18, got out when I was 20.
Okay.
I was only in for 2 years. U.S. Navy.
So with the White Shepherd, how did you get back into dog shows? And since you had the White Shepherd, you couldn't show them. So
well, the White Shepherd was a very nice dog, well proportioned. if he could have competed, he would have competed, I think, very well. But I did a lot of training with him. I did some Schutzland training with him, and I did all of his obedience training. And in fact, I sent him down to a school in Ohio for some training that I did not do. And Jan and I picked him up on our honeymoon.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah. And brought him home. He was a good dog, but he became too protective of the family. And once Jan was pregnant, we felt we might have a problem. And in fact, one day, a young lady that lived in the neighborhood came over, and she was leaning over the kennel fence, which was only 4 foot high, to pet him, and the fence gave way. She fell on him, and I don't think she got bit, but she got scratched pretty good.
Yeah.
Fortunately, she was a tomboy, and her mom and dad said, "Don't worry about it. She's fine." I bought a muzzle for him, and I was trying the muzzle on him one day. And in those days, the Consumer's Power Man, which is our electrical power, they used to come in the back door. They would just knock on the door, open the door, yell "Consumers," and go down the basement. Well,
wow.
when I got to him, the dog was on his chest. Fortunately, the muzzle was already on, and it was not a pretty sight.
Yeah.
So we decided to not keep him, and I sold him to the Air Force, and they became an Air Force gate guard. And if you want the rest of the story, it takes about 2 minutes. Do you want the whole thing?
Yeah, no, let's hear it. It's good.
Okay, so he went into the service, and the first 4 years that he was in, the handler that had him sent us videos and sent us photographs. I still have some of the photographs of the training that he was in, and it was very nice to get that communication. However, after about 4 years, that fellow got out of the service, and a new handler took over the dog, who only contacted us a couple times, and then it went away. Mm-hmm. After about 8 years, there was a article that ran in the Detroit Free Press, which is our local newspaper out of Detroit, where they would look for people that were lost, or you were trying to find somebody, that sort of thing. And so I wrote in and told them I was looking for the dog. And apparently they thought that was a good public relations type thing. So they found him. And this is really remarkable. They found him in Whitensville, Massachusetts, at an Air Force base. And Jan and I and Laura, our daughter, were actually going to Whitensville the next week.
Oh, wow.
to visit my mother and my fifth stepfather. My mother was married several times, obviously. He was my stepfather. Charles was golf pro at the Whitensville Country Club. So when I got there, I contacted the gate people, or the Air Force people in the canine unit. The sergeant said that Flash was there, and that we could come to see him on Saturday, but he had to advise us that he was going to be put to sleep on Monday.
Ooh.
And I said, well, why is that? He said, well, he's 11 years old. He's too mean for anybody to get near him. And obviously we can't retrain him with another handler at that age. And so I said, well, we would still like to come and see him. So Jan and I went, and you'll have to envision a series of kennels with a walkway down the middle, and the one at the far end contained a white German Shepherd. And the yelling and screaming of dogs on either side of us as we went to the kennels. As we walked up, I was warned that we shouldn't go anywhere near the fence. As we walked up, I looked at him and I said, Flash, no, sit. And he went right down and wagged his tail. and I reached in and scratched him behind the ears. And this is a really hard story to tell.
Yeah, I can.
I thought the sergeant was going to have a fit, but he would not let Jan near him. But he knew me after 8 years. It's amazing what dogs do, isn't it?
That's a great story. Well, not a great, but it's a
heartwarming
story.
We walked away with a lot of tears in our eyes.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
Yeah, it was pretty special.
I bet.
So after that, we had to decide what kind of dog were we going to get. And we sat down and we went through every breed you can imagine, and we came down to 2 breeds, which how we came up with the 2 breeds, well, one of the 2 breeds, I'll never know. But it was going to be either a golden retriever or a Siberian husky. Why we came up with Siberian husky, I have no idea. But my wife, who was always smarter than me anyway, said, with as much hunting as you do, why are we looking at a Siberian husky? And we got our first golden retriever. So that's
and what year was that?
1963.
Wow. Yeah.
1963. And surprisingly enough, over the years, we've always had golden retrievers. But from a breeding standpoint, it was Labrador retrievers that we specialized in.
Yeah, that's right. I remember you mostly. I remember you and Jan, the dog, was in Canada when I was a kid, and I remember Labradors. So
you don't have to say when you were a kid. You don't have to add that part in. When you showed to me in juniors, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been a great time with those 2 breeds. I mean, they're wonderful, wonderful dogs.
So where did you go from there? You got your first golden then. When did you decide to go back to dog shows?
Well, at first, I thought, I would be showing in conformation. That did not work out. So I started in obedience. And I finished a CD and had people contacting me, wanting me to train their dogs. And of course, I lived in the city, and I only had room for 2 dogs, mine and one other. And I did some training for people, and I started doing a lot of field work. And one day I was down at what they call Point Mouillet, which is south of Detroit. And I was doing a field trial down there, which was a local trial, not an AKC trial. And a gentleman by the name of Mort Neff, who owned, who ran the Mort Neff Outdoor Life television program at the time, saw me working. The Golden's name was Thor. Saw me working Thor on hand signals, and he wanted to know if I would do a program for him.
Wow.
And I said, sure, And in any event, I did the program. It was a great success. From 2 standpoints. For them, they felt that they got what they wanted out of me, and my phone started ringing off the hook, people wanting me to train their dogs for field work. So I said to Jan, if we're going to get into this, we need to be somewhere else, not in the city of Flint. So we started looking. We found a property with 5 acres. And it had an attached garage that was a workshop for the gentleman that was selling the house. So it was ideal to convert it into a kennel. And it was a kennel for 5 dogs. And I said, that's all we're going to do. 5 dogs, no more, all in for training. 12 years later, we had 40 kennels. And
it's funny how that happens.
And 12 cat kennels, and you know how that goes. And that's the way it went. And from there, after doing training for all those years, my daughter, I actually started handling too at the time. My daughter was my assistant. In fact, most of my clients said, if you can't make the ring, have Laura take them in. And I thought they figured she was a better handler than I was anyway. And at that point in time, she went off to college. And when she went off to college, the decision was, did we want to stay in the boarding business, which is very, very confining, as you know, or should I start judging? And made the decision to judge. And that was in 1980. And been judging ever since.
Yeah, but you skipped over a big chunk of that for me, Carl, because you started showing dogs. How did you start showing dogs? And I remember you showing dogs when I was younger. I won't say a kid, right. When I was younger.
Yeah.
So you were showing dogs. How did you get involved in the professionally showing dogs?
Well,
I guess you went from the TV show to showing dogs. You skipped something on me.
Well, it was really kind of interesting. We bred our first litter of Labradors, and of all things, the first litter was 13 puppies. I thought she would never quit, but I kept the pick male, and he turned out to be a pretty good dog. And in fact, he actually went winners at Westminster back in that, I think it was must have been about 69 or 70. And I decided to take him to Canada, and I had never shown before. I took him over to Toronto and won every day, 4 straight days. And I thought, this is pretty cool. I like this. So I actually just started handling as an amateur and going to shows, and people started asking me would I show their dog and what have you. Well, in those days, you had to apply to the American Kennel Club to handle. And so you could handle for no pay to get experience. But once you wanted to start charging, you had to apply. And so eventually I applied for Labradors and Goldens, and it went on to the point where at the time that I decided to apply to judge, I was approved for the first 4 groups. And of course, in those days, there were only 6 groups. Herding and working were one group. And from there, then I went off to judging. So, and I did a lot of handling in Canada.
Yeah, some of the pictures you sent me brought up a bunch of great memories. Again, I have ones with James Taylor, ones with Frank Jones, and these are icons to us. I mean, especially when I was growing up, Frank Jones was what we would consider he was like our rep, our shows. A lot of times, he also was a knowledgeable sporting dog judge. And when I saw his picture there, I just things started coming back to me. What was your relationship with Frank? I'm sure our Canadian audience will want to know that.
Frank was turned out to be a really good friend. He was an amazing man. He was a Labrador person, as you know, and so that was our connection, basically. And I showed to Frank many times, and eventually, at one point in time, I showed to him at Progressive Kennel Club in Detroit. And I was fortunate enough to get winner's dog and winner's bitch in Labradors. And we were getting a picture taken following the judging. And Frank leaned over and he said, now you have to understand this is in the spring. And he leaned over and he said, Carl, do you get the Stanley Cups at home? I said, yeah, Frank, I get the Stanley Cups at home. Would you like to come home and watch the Stanley Cups? Why do you think you got all these ribbons, for crying out loud? He said, So I took Frank home and set him up with a TV tray and a beer, and he enjoyed watching the Stanley Cup.
I'm sure he did. Good old Canadian boy.
Oh, I'll tell you, he was a trip. At one time, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name. I remember it was John, and he had Irish setters.
Royston?
Pardon?
John Royston?
I don't remember the last name. But anyway, we were sitting up on the stage at the old Sportsman show in Toronto and just talking. And they were talking about London and England. And Frank said, well, he hadn't been there since the war. And I said, oh, my goodness, Frank. I said, since World War II, it's changed a lot. And he said, not World War II, the big war. WW1, you fool. He was a trip, I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
I also showed one time where he was at a show where he was not doing sporting, and I was showing a lot of sporting, and I had a German short hair that he seemed to admire, and he said, how come you never show that dog to me? And I said, well, I'll show it to you sometime, Frank. So I lined up a show in Scarborough that he was judging at, and I took a string of dogs and went there, and I won under him with just about every dog except the German short hair. And I have no clue to this day why the German short hair didn't win, because that's the one he wanted.
Yeah, well.
But that was Frank.
Yeah, so. For sure. I remember, I think I told you earlier, my memory of Frank was, I think it was a Kitchener dog show, and it was behind the dressing rooms, behind the ice rink, the surface. And I remember he was the dog show rep at that point. I remember his finger in the face of my old boss, Gary McDonald. This is well before I was working for Gary, but he was telling him something and making sure Gary got the message. But it was, I still see it. And you can see the look. And it was a look of fear and respect on Gary's face, you know.
Well, he could do that. He was a big man.
Yeah.
If you've got time for one other quick story.
Oh, God, yes. We have lots of time. Go ahead. I love them.
Well, you know, the largest specialty in the United States is the Potomac for Labrador Retrievers. And I was there showing a dog for a client, and I was sitting watching bred by exhibitor bitches with Frank and his wife and my wife and my client. And the judge pointed 1, 2, 3, 4. And when she pointed, Frank got up. And he said, I finally got that. And I won't use the term. We do use it for female dogs. But and I said, what the heck is that all about? And he walked away. So I followed him. And he went over and he filed a complaint with the AKC rep. And it turned out that the judge that did sweepstakes was a co-owner on the dog that won. And came back, and I thought, what the heck, Frank? What is that all about? Well, he says 25 years ago, and I went, oh my God, 25 years ago. 25 years ago, those people wanted one of my stud dogs, and I put them on the train and sent them up to them, and they were going to use them on 2 or 3 bitches, and I couldn't get it, the dog back. It took a long time, and he said, finally I called him, and they said, well, it'll be another month, and the dog came back at least a month or 6 weeks later, and he said, I got him off the train, and I took him home, and let him out in the yard, and he wasn't walking right. And I looked at him, and I thought, something's wrong with this dog. Took him in, and I don't think they x-rayed then. I think it was fluoroscope. But in any event, the dog had a pin in its leg.
Oh, wow.
And Frank remembered forever till he got his evens. Yeah. And the dog that went number 1, of course, lost the ribbon because couldn't be shown, shouldn't have been shown.
Yeah.
So Frank got his evens, and I thought,
sure.
my God, I'm glad I never made him mad after
Because he doesn't
25
forget.
years.
Well, gonna be up front.
But he was a good guy.
Yeah,
he was a good guy.
I was very young, but I still remember his presence at the dog show. I really do. So,
yeah.
My father was always, my dad was showing dogs at that point too. So it was always talk about Frank. So because he was known as our gun dog person in the area. So
what was the fellow's name that showed German Shepherds in Canada all the time? Well-known handler, specialized in German Shepherds.
Back then?
Yeah.
Was it like Tony Monk?
No.
John Fabian?
John Fabian.
Yeah.
And Gary McDonald.
Yeah.
You talked about Gary McDonald. I was at a show north of Toronto, on the way up to Sudbury. Can't remember the name of the show. But in any event, I was showing an Irish setter. Fabian had an Irish setter, and Gary McDonald had an Irish setter. And the judge, whose name I don't know, but she was you probably would know her. She was a warden, I believe, at a prison.
Lois Burpee.
Lois Burpee. So we're in the ring, and she says, "Take him around." Now, Gary's in front. No, Fabian's in front. No, Gary's in front. Fabian's second, and I'm third as we go around. And Fabian apparently thought Gary was too close. So he stopped and ducked, and Gary went over top of Fabian. Dogs all tangled up. I, of course, stayed back. This lady, Lois, walked over, grabbed both of them by the back of the neck and put them right up against the wall and said, "Stay there." Examined my dog, gave him first, pulled those two out, and figured out who was second and third. But I mean, they knew better than to move.
Oh, for sure.
That's
she
a
was
true
a
story.
Scary person. Lois Burpee. That's amazing. Those are great stories. So you started judging in 1980, you said?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, how did you decide?
Actually, I was approved in December of 1980, and my first assignment was in January of 81.
Oh, okay.
And it was an interesting assignment. There's a story behind it.
Oh, let's hear it.
Well, I was obviously home waiting for the phone to ring. I thought, people were going to be calling me like crazy. And I got a call from a lady in just outside of Chicago asking me if I would like to come and judge an overload. I was approved for the 5 retriever breeds. There were only 5 at the time. We didn't have the tollers, obviously. And she called and wanted to know if I would like to do an overload of 62 golden retrievers. And I thought, wow, perfect. I can just start with one breed and the breed that I felt, comfortable with and everything. And she said, we pay $2 a dog and you're on your own, hotel, everything. Believe it or not, I made money on it. Even though gas was 89 cents a gallon. Who would have thought, The hotel was like $15 for the night. In any event, the story behind my first assignment was I hung up the phone and called the hospital and canceled my hernia surgery for that weekend.
Jeez. Things we do to judge dogs or go to a dog show. Yeah.
Whatever it takes. That's right. Whatever it takes. So, and then, like I said, I started. Do you remember Mort Conrad?
Mort Conrad? No, I don't think so.
He was an AKC rep. In fact, he was in charge of the reps at the time. I went to Mort and asked him what he thought about me applying to judge. And he said, well, he said, I know you've probably finished almost every breed in the sporting group. He said, what would you want to start with? And I said, well, obviously I have Labs and Goldens. And he said, I would like to apply for the 5 retriever breeds. And in those days, it was Mr. Brumby that made the decision. There was no committee. He decided who got what, when, and where. And of course, I wasn't known to him, and I didn't know him. I'm out here in the Midwest. He's in New York City. So Mort said, I'll tell you what, he said, apply for all the retrievers and all the pointers, and that'll give Mr. Brumby something to throw out. And he was absolutely correct. They threw out the pointers, and I started with the 5 retrievers. And in those days, good Lord, my third assignment was in California, and I overdrew with the 5 retrievers. I ended up only doing Labs and Goldens because numbers were so much higher.
Yeah.
It's a shame what we have today, but
yeah, sometimes that's for sure. Yeah. So, did you have any mentors on the way, Carl?
Oh, sure. When you talk about mentors in the various breeds and everything, there were lots. But when it came to actually handling, I really didn't. I just kind of stumbled into it and learned the hard way, just working my way up through a couple of breeds and what have you. Once I got somewhat established, Tommy Gladford and people like that, they were helpful to me. But basically the handling part I did pretty much on my own. Mm-hmm. And that's about it, really.
What about judging mentors then?
Well, it was pretty much the same in those days as it is today. You had to go to kennels, you had to go talk to people, and go to nationals. I was fortunate. I never actually had to spend a lot of money because the people that I knew and the reps that I knew at the time were very friendly to me, and I was able to apply on a regular basis. I did get into one situation as I was going for the sporting group, if you think you might find that interesting.
Oh, yeah, let's hear
it. I was out in California, and I'm not going to use names, but I was out in California, and I was judging Vizslas, and I had a Vizsla that had a rather large white spot on the chest. And I thought, at that time, the standard said massive, and it didn't describe massive. And so I got down and I looked, and I decided this was the best dog I had, and that the spot was not massive, and I gave it winner's dog. Well, the rep was not thrilled about that. And in the discussion, I didn't probably present myself the best way I could, because she said, I consider that white to be massive. And I replied with, well, where does your expertise come from? Not exactly the right thing to say, especially when I found out her folks had Vizslas.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. But, she had an opinion, and she was entitled to that opinion.
It's all interpretation anyway.
I said, well, I have other breeds to judge. My wife was with me at the time. I said, I have other breeds to judge. I said, well, if it's okay with you, can we discuss it at lunch? And she said, sure. And she was very cordial about it. We discussed it at lunch. And when we walked away, I said to Jan, I said, well, I think that went very well. And she just looked at me and said, that lady is livid. Now, I had my application in for the balance of the sporting group. And about 6 weeks later, I got in the mail that I had applied for 8 breeds, that I got 4. And so I called and talked to the lady who was in charge at the time. And I asked if she could explain to me why. And she said, well, it looks like you're hesitant to disqualify. And I said, really? I said, can I take a guess that it was a Vizsla? And she said, yes, that's what it looks like. And I said, well, I'd like to appeal. And she said, well, you can appeal it in writing, you can appeal in person, or if you choose not to appeal, you can reapply in 6 months. And I said, well, I'm going to do it in person. So I had to fly to New York. So in the meantime, Jan and I sat on the floor. And if you remember back in those days, the AKC Gazette listed every show and the results of every show. It came in two parts. You got the magazine part and the
results
and the rest of it.
Yeah.
And we sat on the floor with piles of gazettes around us and looked that dog up, and we found 14 shows where the dog got a ribbon. I didn't care if it won. I only cared that it got a ribbon,
sure,
which means it was not disqualified. And one of the judges that gave it a ribbon, you would know very well. He gave him a reserve at a large specialty. The judge's name was Bob Waters.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They didn't question him, did they?
I documented everything, and I actually wrote a brief, sent it off to 2 judge friends that were also lawyers, and they critiqued it and sent it back and made suggestions. And I flew to New York and went before the committee and gave my speech, and was questioned and what have you. And when it was all over, they said, do you have anything else you would like to add? And I said, yes. And I handed everybody a small piece of paper that had the words small, medium, large, extra large, and massive on it. And I said, would anybody in the room put that in any other chronological order? And they all said, no, that would be the way you would do it. And I said, well, ladies and gentlemen, small, medium, large, extra large, what the hell is massive? I got the balance of the group.
Yeah, good for you.
And the standard was changed. Now, I can't take credit for the standard being changed, but I'll bet you it had something to do with it.
I'm sure it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. That's a lot of work you put into it. That was good.
Anyway, that's how I ended up getting the sporting group. And then from there, of course, just moving along and going to kennels and talking to people and that sort of thing. So
what do you have? You have group 1, 3, and 7. Is that what you have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
those were the 3 groups I started out to get. Okay. I did not ever intend to be an all-rounder. And those were the breeds that I really wanted to judge, and I haven't applied in the last 12 years. So,
that's what you want. I feel the same way about. Look, I'm just starting this year. I'll be writing probably end of at least November, probably. And I feel the same way as you. There's a few groups I definitely want, and other groups, I don't feel as strong in. So that's the way I see it. But.
Well, you can use me for Goldenson Labs.
Perfect. What was I going to say?
Besides, I don't know if we're allowed to put this out, but of course you handled Labs and Goldens for me in Canada.
Yeah,
Correct?
I was telling stories. You were off hunting in I think it was Newfoundland the one time I showed your dog. I said, you said
Yeah,
you gotta get
that's
it
when
finished while I'm gone. So we
the,
did.
you know who it was? You remember the dog's name? Chip.
Oh God, yeah, Chip, yeah.
And when I came back, you said, I'll meet you at Tim Hortons. And I said, Will, there are 1,500 Tim Hortons in Toronto. Which one? And I said, how did my dog do? And you said, you wasted your money on 2 of the 5 shows. He finished in the first 3. He's still alive.
Yeah, well, I remember you telling me, well, you try to get him finished while I'm gone. Well, you didn't have to be gone very long, did you?
No. Yeah, he's still alive. He'll be 14 next month.
Oh my gosh.
And doing fine.
Excellent.
Doing fine. Still looks good.
I bet. Yeah. What advice would you give for an upcoming judge? Or an aspiring judge?
Pardon?
Or an aspiring judge?
Well, obviously, get out and talk to the people that are judging. Find out. I mean, I've mentored, many new judges. Procedure is the most important thing for a new judge. I mean, you obviously figure that the person that it's applying, they're applying generally for one breed. Possibly 2 or 3, but they're breeds that they've owned. So you have to assume that they have some knowledge of those breeds. But what they don't have knowledge of is how to act in the ring, what the ring procedure should be, and how it should be the same for everybody. You can't be changing it. Spend some time practicing with a judge showing you how to do it. I have a young lady in my kennel club that I've been mentoring for the last year, and she's now judging, and she only does golden retrievers, but she's doing a good job. And it's because she was willing to learn from the beginning. Don't assume because you've been in the ring showing dogs that you know how to act in the ring as a judge. It just doesn't, it doesn't correlate.
Exactly. Many people don't understand what a difficult job it is actually. When you're outside the ring watching, it's an easy job. But when you're actually in there,
simple.
Yeah,
it's simple from outside.
Yeah,
and there are the little things from outside that you probably will not see. For instance, if you're not exactly down where the down and back is, you can't tell for sure from the side that whether a dog is crossing in the rear or elbowing out, or what the difference might be. There are times when there are dogs in the ring that are top winning dogs in the country, but they're not performing on that day. And you don't assume because somebody advertises their dog all the time and it's number one golden retriever, doesn't mean that the dog's going to be perfect every day.
That's right.
And dogs have off days just like people do. And it's on the day. What if they're performing, then they're performing. If they're not, they're not.
Yeah. And people forget you have 2 minutes to judge that dog. It's
well, you know what I tell them? Heads can get better and movement can get better, but not in the 2 minutes I've got to look at them.
That's right.
So, you do what try to do the best you can. You can't always get it right. Although we like to think we do, but we don't. And sometimes you sit and think about it when you get home and say, I'm not so sure I shouldn't have done this or that or the other thing. But I don't dwell on it because it's just a matter of you've got it in your mind what you did and what you think maybe you should have done. Just keep it in your mind so that the next time you pick up on that. So, but
that's true. So, what's next for Carl? You got any exciting assignments coming up, or any plans? Or
well, Well, I have one I can't tell you about, but
Oh.
oh, actually have two I can't tell you about.
Oh man.
I know. I mean, what the heck? Um, but well, the rest of this year, I've got, I don't know, a dozen or so shows left, and I'll be down in Orlando, doing Labradors and Tollers and Flatcoats down there.
That'll be fun. We go to
And well, it's, as we were talking earlier about the numbers, how the numbers have changed over the years, and you don't get the numbers in the ring anymore. You do in Orlando.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite shows to do, and I've been fortunate to have done it probably a dozen or more times now. I did the group 2 years ago, and it was spectacular. I mean, I just loved it. But the nice thing about Orlando is you've got nice big rings and plenty of dogs to judge. Typically,
yeah.
I mean, typically there's 120, 140 Labradors. Same thing in Goldens, and that's where the challenge is. You can stand in the ring with one or two dogs. Almost anybody can figure that out. But if you're standing in the ring looking at a class of 25 or 30 or 40 or 50, now it takes some work.
Exactly.
And that's where judging becomes a lot of fun for me anyway. Trying to figure out which one's the best of a group of 20 or 25, and it just, I don't know, pumps me up. So.
Well, I've shown to you for years, and it looks like you're always having fun when you're out there. You seem enthusiastic and passionate. And
when I stop having fun, that's when I'm going to stop judging. It is a little harder. I mean, I'm 82 years old now, so it takes, all the bones and muscles don't move quite as rapidly as they used to, although people continually tell me you never change. You look the same.
You don't.
Well,
you're still running 5 miles a day?
Well, my last 5 mile run, or actually 5K run, was when I was 77. And the only reason I stopped is I got arthritis in my left foot. And actually, if you see me in the ring now, you would probably excuse me for limping. But it just doesn't work to try to run on it. No. I do walk every day. I walk a couple miles a day. But I work out. I exercise quite a bit. But I think you have to if you want to judge. I mean, I can still squat down and look at whatever I've got to look at and get back up without looking like an old fool. So anyway, that's I think you should stay in shape if you can. So
definitely make your life easier if you want to judge dogs. So.
Right. So you're applying when?
I've already applied, so I just have to wait to write the test. I'm hoping to be writing the test in November. So, yeah.
So are you applying in Canada?
Yeah, in Canada.
Okay.
Doing the first half of sporting in Canada. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You can't apply for the whole group now, huh?
No, it's just half at a time. Yeah.
Yeah. You've probably shown a few of those sporting dogs. So
I've shown a few, so I'm hoping I can get through it.
You ever finish one? No, it's you've been a delight to know over the years, my friend. So
same with you. It's always so much fun when you're on a panel or when you just at the shows. I always have fun. And when I showed dogs for you a couple of times, it was great. One last question, Carl, and I'll let you get back.
Sure.
If you could meet up with the 20-year-old Carl who just got out of the service, is there any advice you'd give him now?
Life throws you some hard balls, and it throws you some curves, and it throws you some soft ones. But my life has been really good. Obviously, losing Jan 17 years ago was the pits. It was the bottom of the barrel for me. But the life we had before was fabulous. We were married for 42 years. There's an old Jewish saying that's right up on the wall above me right now. It says, "Say not in grief that he is no more, but live in thankfulness that he was." And that's the way I feel about her. And I don't think I'd change anything. Little things, but mainly, no, my life's been really good. I have a wonderful daughter, a son-in-law that I wouldn't trade for anyone in the world. In fact, if I had to go out and pick a son-in-law, he'd be the one I'd pick. And 2 grandkids, and then my granddaughter, who lives in Portland, Oregon now, called me a couple of months ago, and she said, she calls me Baba. Both my grandkids call. In fact, everybody calls me Baba now in the family. She said, "Baba, what are you doing on December 12th?" And I said, "I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead. Why?" And she said, "Well, I just wondered what it would be like on December 12th to find out you're going to be a great grandpa."
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So how can you beat that?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I guess I'd tell my 20-year-old self, fire ahead, go for it.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. Yeah. That was a good interview, Carl. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
All right. I guess I'll see you soon, won't I? So.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I think you're coming up here to judge shortly.
I am.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, no, not next week. A week after.
Yeah, a few weeks. Good.
Yeah. In fact, I'm going right from there down to Toledo to judge at Fulton County. So.
Oh, we appreciate you.
I come in on Wednesday, I judge on Thursday, and I leave on Friday for the other 2 shows. So.
Well, I look forward to seeing you.
All righty. Thank you, my friend.
All right, Carl. You have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, thanks, Carl. It was good to catch up with you. Can't wait to see you in person. If you like what we're doing here, make sure you press the like, share, and subscribe button. If you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of me at dogshowtips@gmail.com. Just want to find out what's happening in Will's world, go to willalexander.net. Or don't forget the Dog Show Drive on Thursdays with myself and Wayne Kavanaugh. Until next time, peace out, guys.